Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's show. I am Delbridge, Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and this is Thursday, the 15th of May, 2025. So we have a good show for you today, and we'll get into it. First, I just want to say, if you live in the country like I do, and you have a burn pile set up, which is composed no plastics or nastiness, but just organic material, deadfalls, trees, branches, leaves, stuff like that. Normally, the state required burn permit ends on May 15th, if I remember my refrigerator and the whiteboard that's been there for the last 10 years. So you would check them to find out if you have any leaves or something to burn. And I would also check with your city and county as well, as they may have a prohibition because of dryness or something going on, or maybe they just don't want you burning it inside of the city or whatever. I'll leave that for you to check. But we got a good show for you, so let's get to it right now. If you like this content, please go to CallDelToSell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when each Friday's blog has been uploaded. Thank you. Well, all right, now we got our little bit that we always have to have up front done. Let's get to our first little screen here. Now, this is the Small Business Optimism Index, and it is one of the economic trends. We don't have time to really do a whole lot. I will hit this overview because I haven't presented this to you before. It is the NIFB Research Foundation has collected small business economic trends data with quarterly surveys since the fourth quarter of 1973 and the monthly survey since 1986. Survey respondents are drawn from the NFIB's membership, so it's not necessarily widespread. They have to be members, so it's going to be a little trendy based upon their bias of their people. And you can look at this right here. The biggest thing we want to look at, we'll skedaddle down to this top point. We'll hit it lightly, not even completing the sentences when we read. The net percentage of owners expecting business conditions for 6 months from March to a new 15% seasonally adjusted, the lowest since October. The next one is also down. Higher retail sales volume fell 4 points to a negative 1% seasonally adjusted. The negative 4% seasonally adjusted owners planned inventory down 3 points. Now, I'll pull this up so that you don't have to find this in the description of our status chat, but you can if you want. It is the Small Business Optimism Index components. And these are the individual levels. So this is what we had change, and this is what it was to the index, the percentage. It does affect it, the total at the bottom. 21 in earnings trend. Well, that was actually up, positive at 7. -3 in expected credit condition. They expect credit to deteriorate. I got something on that in just a bit, and so on and so on. So you can see what we have to do on the index. It's not all beer and Skittles. It's a little plus, it's a little minus, but I think it's pretty well much not looking so bad. And speaking of that, let's get to something I do want to talk about. Why are people so negative? Well, a lot of it has to do with the constant barrage since before the election that the world was going to snap off its axis if the bad orange man won. And they have been hitting us with tariff fears and everything else, and henny penny, the sky is falling. Well, let's look at what this says right here. Tariff receipts topped $16 billion in April, a record that helped cut the budget deficit. Now, what does it mean, the budget deficit? We continue to spend way out ahead of how much money we got coming in. That's our debt. You know that. We know that. So this was a good month, $16 billion. Now we're going to talk here in this bullet point that we're going to pull up right here. Oh, by the way, this is by Jeff Cox. You can find this in every link that we use in the description of the status chat over on the YouTube page if you want to pull these in, because you see something maybe I don't get to because we have such a big show. But anyway, we look at it. Customs duties totaled $16.3 billion in the month, some 86% above the $8.75 billion collected during March, and more than double a year ago, which was $7.1 billion. So, yeah, tell me that tariffs don't work, and we really haven't seen any real meaningful disruption in our lives just yet. We still have existing inventory, so I don't think we're going to go too bad. Now, I feel bad for the Chinese, who are led by a communist party, and they have to play tough for a while. We're not dealing with America. We're not dealing with the world. We are the CCP. The world will do what we tell them to do because we are China and the CCP, and they're really hurting the people. So I'd like to send another bit of a concern out to the people who are caught in between us. But as it gets bad, even worse than it's been through the last couple of years, China has begun to talk to us, and that has sent our stock markets to glorious new levels. We're looking pretty good. Optimism, I think, is there, but this is fairly recent news that I don't think was showing up in the NFIB's survey. So let's look at this again. We're going to next look at something that isn't very pleasant for some people, and this is from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, serving the 2nd District of the nation. All right, we're Center for Microeconomic Data. Well, to listen to the mainstream media and everybody on the left and in the shadow party, those not in power, this was the end of the world as we know it, that the students have to pay their loans off. And I don't mean to sound disrespectful to the students, but it is your debt. You took the loan out, you signed it, you made the agreement, you owe the money, you will pay it back. It's not fair. You want to talk about what's fair? It's not fair to make your grandma and grandpa and even the little people that are yet to go into the workforce, to make them pay your debt. You chose it, you pay it, because if we were to let you out of your obligation, it's going to go onto our debt. It's going to cause more watering down of our dollar, and everybody suffers from a choice you made. Now, you made the choice. I don't fuss at you for that, but you have to pay. Now, imagine this. For 4 years, you've had a stay on interest. Think about it in terms of a house. What could you do to your net worth today if you had bought a house and for the first several years, say the first 5 years, you didn't pay any interest, and every dime you paid on your mortgage, it went to principal? Oh my goodness, what a difference would that have made if you had had that position? Because at the start of a loan on this side, it's almost all interest and very little principal, and it's not till you get to the aging out of the loan that you get a big, huge chunk of principal and not that much interest left, right? Well, these students, if they haven't been paying for the last 4 years, they really missed a golden opportunity to knock that debt down. Now, if they're just out there thinking that somebody's going to pay their bill for them, it's going to hurt them. But yet, when we look at the data, you'll see it's not that big of a deal. Not to the economy as a whole. Now, it's debt. We need our money back. It says here, the household debt increased by $167 billion to reach the $18.20 trillion in the first quarter, according to the quarterly report on household and debt and credit. Credit card balances fell by, that's showing that we're paying stuff off, fell by $29 billion from the previous quarter to stand at $1.18 trillion. And auto loan balances declined, so that means we're paying off on our cars by $13 billion to $1.64 trillion, marking only the second time balances have fallen from the prior quarter since 2011. Let that soak in. Let's get me off the page so that we can see that. The balances have fallen since the prior quarter for the first time since 2011. That is an accomplishment. Now let's look at the graph, because we heard by everybody on the left and the other party that this is going to ruin the economy if people pay back their loans. And I'm not being disrespectful to the students, but it is your loan. Here we see the total debt. It's been increasing at a record pace back here, all the way up until about 2008. We had that little crisis. Things came down, and we're kind of going back up. But this last month, when it became active, didn't really make that big a difference on the overall debt. It went up a little bit, but then it always goes up a little bit, right? Are we not seeing that trend? So let me get it down here where we got our quarters in here. And this is from the Federal Reserve Bank, New York. It's just coming up a little bit, right? It's not yet hitting us too hard. That is 2025 Q1 end. So perhaps it might jump up a little bit when we hit the next quarter, but that's be at the end of end of June rather. But anyway, we are making headway in some of our debt, and it's just those who have the student loan debt that have to pay off their loans. And maybe it'll help them make great choices later on in life. So let's hope them see the best. Got a little Kermit the Frog there. Now let's check our next one. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I think this is some good news. I was tickled to hear this earlier this week. The CPI got better. Let's look at all items. Now this includes energy, right? Which is our main thing we've got going on here. 2.3%. 2.3%. What was it that the FOMC said they wanted to see before they cut rates? And then they cut it a percent point right before the election. There we have it. 2.3%, almost at 2%. That's all items, but a lot of it's offset by energy. And what did we do when we offset energy? We drill, baby, drill. We're getting rid of that ridiculous EV mandate when we don't have the infrastructure to support them. We're going back to fuel efficient cars. I'm all for that. Let's drive smaller and lighter combined trips. There's things we can do to help ourselves and the world out that don't involve driving cars with dynamite essentially under their carriage, which is, you ever do the calculation of how many 8-inch sticks of dynamite, there's about what, 0.273 kilowatts or watts, whatever, in each 8-inch stick of dynamite. And when you put that into the kilowatt hours that you have in the storage of a battery, if it's 100% charged up, you're sitting on a bunch of dynamite if you were to have a crash and crush those cells. So we don't have that, but we do have a great reduction in energy, down almost 4%. That is so good. I'm just loving that part. And the CPI rises only by 0.2%. Shelter is up. Of course, your housing's always going to keep going up, but really it's looking pretty darn good, the CPI. Well, we have something to accompany it this week that was out today, I believe it was, which is the PPI. Now, the PPI, as you know, the Producer Price Index. What it's going to do is it's going to be a leading indicator, whereas the consumer is on the end. They're the ones who buy, right? So if we can see some good news in the PPI, that's going to be good news indeed. Now it says the PPI final demand decreases from 0.5 in April. Services decline 0.7, goods unchanged. So we haven't really had that. With the goods being unchanged, we really don't have that fear-mongering that the new duties on imports are going to just crush the economy and ruin everyone's lives. It didn't do it. Goods unchanged. We're down a little bit in services, and we can see that. We can see a big line. Most of it's been in the commodity prices, and some of that, are going to be tied to energy prices coming down. And that's not too bad, but you can read about this at your leisure when you get into the description on the status chat. Now, what do we have here? I have a news release. We're going to look at one other thing here. This is from the Department of Labor. Unemployment insurance weekly claims. We're not going to get into this much. This is all we really need to see this line. We are actually down below where we were back several quarters ago. Let's take this back. Here we have what is this month? These are months rather than quarters. I apologize. So we're still doing what? Pretty flat. So we haven't seen massive amounts of increase or decrease in that. It's just kind of holding its own. Now here's something I think we all could be excited about. This we pull off of this one. Who is this from? Money Watch? All right, little Amy there. Amy, I don't have my glasses. I can't say Piachi. I'm going to guess that name. Tax cuts, here's how that could impact your money. This, when I scanned through it, is a pretty good little write-up. But we're having trouble as a Republican-backed bill moves ahead in the House. That's where all, according to the Constitution, our spending come from. The proposed tax cuts under the measure include some new and surprising changes that could impact wallets of millions of Americans. Now, I don't know if you have seen it, but Trump had run on cutting no taxes on overtime, no taxes on tips. A lot of the tipped income is not reported anyway, so it's not really likely to hurt us by not taxing our tips as much. So why not let people have a break from potential income tax fraud? It's a good plan I like. Plus I like no tax on overtime. Now, I know some people might say, well, if we can pay someone if we can have 6 people on payroll and pay them overtime and know that if our economic conditions shift, we can just not have the overtime. We can just not have the overtime and we don't have to hurt people and their families and all their stuff if we have to cut somebody back or whatever. It just cuts back from overtime. So I like that. I like that idea. I think it gives business owners a great deal of flexibility. And what I haven't heard anybody say is, yes, but if they can hire 6 and pay them overtime instead of hiring 7 and not pay them overtime, then I discount that argument because it's a business choice that doesn't directly hurt people. I don't think anybody would fire a good employee just so they could pay more in overtime wages. Maybe I'm just nuts. So I don't think it has a negative side to it, but I think it could be tremendous for families to keep a little bit more of their money and have a little less in taxes. Now, we have the extension of the 2017 tax cuts. Now, if you don't know, I believe it was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Provision Act that took away some of our exchange, our IRS exchange property for property, and added a much stricter like in kind. You could only change in like residential. If you change properties, you couldn't go from residential to, say, strip mall. But you could do your tax exchange on residential from, say, rental houses to, I'm not a tax guy, but you do rental houses to maybe quadplexes or something like that. Or you could sell those off and buy individuals as long as it was residential to residential, but you couldn't go residential to commercial or commercial to industrial, that type of thing. Best I remember from my 1031. But that was put in back here in the 2017 tax cuts. So we did get that, and they're talking about extending some of that, and you can read this article as well, but we are getting some degree of kickback because the Democrats pointed out the tax cuts proposed by President Trump as eliminating the taxes on tips and wages expire after 2028, limiting the benefits. So they're just wanting to complain? I mean, that's going to get us through a significant post-Biden economy adjustment. And if at that point, if after 2028 they want to extend them, they can. Did we not just see above it? The 2017 tax cuts are being extended. They can do it. I think they're just wanting to complain. So we do need some cooperation out of Congress. And there are a few Republicans fussing ostensibly for the tax. One side says the tax cuts are cutting revenue, but they're not cutting the spending. And others are saying, they're just arguing. I don't know if this is going to get through. But it's not because someone hasn't tried, right? All right. So what do you say we get onto our numbers and wrap this show up? I personally think we're looking pretty good. Things are changing, and we have to be ready to catch the change, but I think things are good. Last week's episode, we pointed out how even Europe is changing, how even the EU buckled down against China on you're not dumping your low price stuff hurting our European jobs. The lady she's actually Italian, is in charge of the EU's bit there. And then we see that Nigel Farage and Reform UK is coming in there, and they show that people want change in how things are done. So I think the whole of the free world is coming up on a sea change of direction. And I think people want that. So let's hit our last little commercial that we have to hit, and then we'll get our numbers. Hello, I'm Delbridge of Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you are currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side and room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel, CallDelToSell. That's 1 L and Del, no spaces. Watch the demo on Real Scout, and then call me and we'll set up your exclusive ad-free account today. Alrighty, you ready for this? 5/8 of 25, that was last week. We had 25,234 in the opportunities. That includes the coming soons that aren't technically available to put a contract on, but you can at least see them. So we had 25,234 there. We had on the under contract still showing, just like we do every week. We had 4658. Both of those increased, and we saw the integer ratio between those two drop to 18, and it had been 18 just 2 weeks before that, so that's not too bad. And this week, 5/15 of 25, we have 25,669 in the opportunities. That did increase a little bit, a few hundred, not too bad. And 4704 were the under contract still showing. That went up less than 100, but it did go up. And the ratio stayed the same at 18%. So, yeah, I'm not really thinking that the world is going to snap off its axis. I don't know that we are home free by any means, but I think if we keep our head about us, I don't want to go Rudyard Kipling on you but yeah, I think we're looking a lot more rosy than a lot of the media sources would try to convince you of. They said the world will snap off its axis. It hasn't happened yet. They said massive unemployment. It hasn't happened yet. Store shortages. It hasn't happened yet. You know, the tariffs are negotiating. We've got someone who's kind of wrote the book on negotiating, right? In charge of it. He's doing pretty good. So let's keep our heads, keep our eyes on the data, and our hearts in our chest, and our hair on our head, and let's just keep calm. Keep calm and soldier on.